Hello and welcome to the podcast Emotional Intelligence, your greatest asset and key to success. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Carlaccio, coming to you from the greater New Haven, Connecticut area. As a positive intelligence or PQ coach, I'm committed to helping people develop both emotional intelligence and mental fitness. That is, you'll come to regard problems as situations that help you learn and grow. PQ is a way of being and doing in the world that enables you to develop and sustain a positive relationship with yourself and others, at home, at work, and everywhere in between. Please subscribe to this podcast and tap the like button so more people can enjoy the benefits of PQ. And now, here's the show. And hello, Doreen, and welcome everybody to episode 13 of Emotional Intelligence. Today we are going to talk about essence, and I am thrilled that Dr. Doreen Downing is with us today. She's going to be talking a lot about her own experience and the way that sometimes I think we come to things the hard way. I guess if we came to it the easy way, it wouldn't be as valuable. So just a couple of tidbits about Doreen. She is a psychologist, an author, a speaker, and she is the host of a lovely podcast called Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. And Doreen, I was on your podcast a year ago last March. Doreen once suffered from stage fright, and in conquering her fear, she found her voice and discovered that being connected to her essence with a capital E, that authentic self, is the key to relaxed and confident speaking. She's passionate about helping others overcome anxiety and express the amazing essence of who they are so that they can truly speak and be heard. And Doreen, welcome.
Well, welcome. It looks like my internet connection might not be quite strong enough, but I thought it was.
Huh. Well,
But we will carry on
yes,
regardless.
yes. Technology is always going to be technology, not fail safe and not foolproof, right?
Yeah, dancing in the moment with you, Jamie. That's the fun of it.
Yeah, yeah. So, Doreen, just for our listeners and viewers, Doreen and I met, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago or a little more at another
Mhm.
networking group. And she has this amazing podcast. And as I said, it's about find your voice, change your life. And what's really important is the kind of work Doreen does is really helping people to discover that part of ourself that is only and always and already lovable. That part of ourselves that sometimes we're afraid to show because of external circumstances or the way we were raised or some environmental thing. But the people that Doreen interviews on her show are people who have lost their voice and then found it, and they have a success story. And for people who are afraid to speak up, Doreen offers guidance and support and some valuable tools to help people speak up and find that authentic voice. And I think one of the catchwords these days is authenticity. And sometimes I think it's overused because now what does it mean to be authentic? So, would you like to comment a little bit about authenticity and then maybe tie it to essence as you understand it?
Oh, here we go, launching into this deep conversation like we always have. It seems like we open up to a realm that most people don't really feel that comfortable in because it's the inner world that I feel like you and I like to peek into and say hello in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great question. What is authenticity? And I think that if we move more towards this idea that it's obviously something that carries inside of us, and
Yeah.
it could be more along the lines of unique, our personality. But I believe, and this takes me to essence, that it's more of something that you have referred to as the divine inside of us, like perhaps the wise sage, the inner sage, the part that is indestructibly beautiful. No question about it. Like what you said in the intro, that we're born with something that is our life force. And
Yes.
we move on into life and get our lessons that sometimes uh, turn into beliefs that are not the truth, and we lose connection with the truth of who we really are. And to me, the essence is that truth, that spirit, that divine spark. And my whole work is about, well, how do we find it and how do we speak from it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you say truth, are you talking big T or little t?
I would say both, actually, because it has to do with knowing ourselves so that there's a big truth in there, but
Yeah.
it's also knowing ourselves and knowing what kind of, oh, what makes us upset, so that the upset might be a little truth. You know, want to go get mad at somebody,
Mm-hmm.
but the bigger truth is that there's maybe the relationship matters, and you want to communicate in a more compassionate way rather than just reacting. So that to me, there's a little bit of a distinction between T, little T.
Mm-hmm. I This makes me think of a lot of the things that I have been watching and listening to regarding really doing this inner work, because it is inner work, and it is, for a lot of people, they dare not tread there, because for some people it's very scary. And I know when I was doing a lot of this work, it was some of the most difficult time of my life, because I had to go in where the pain was, and I had to dig in there, and I had to go through all of the layers that had been put on me by other people, and those layers were painful, but I had to uncover them in order to
Oh,
get to that original divine self, that inner sage. And it was not a journey for the lighthearted. It was extremely
right.
difficult. It took years, and it took a lot of crying and a lot of just kind of get through the day if you can. And, if you can't, that's okay too. And learning how to love myself at every age of my life, from toddler all the way up to the age I am now, and I'm 29 plus.
Yes.
So, but a lot of people, I think, and this probably goes to something that you work with a lot, when we speak our truth, I think people who don't want to hear it don't want to believe you. Or they say, no, that's not true. Or no, you're just saying that. Or don't be that way. And that is a way of negating somebody's truth. What do you think?
Yeah, in fact, just the few sentences you used right there are all different circumstances. But I think bottom line, what you're talking about is what's inside of me is what wants to come through. And I think it's important, we are relational beings. So speaking our truth, and I'm putting quotes around it because it might mean something for anybody. And we just talked about big T, little t, but
Yes.
speaking our truth, we have to remember that we're in relationship, that we aren't just here to throw out our reaction, but we're here to communicate for best, at least for me, the best good. So communicating to somebody about what my truth happens to be is, how do we say it? You know, there's ways to say, to set up that kind of conversation. I have some things I'd like to share with you. Is that okay? Or, I have some things that I might share with you that maybe you're going to be upset with.
Uh-huh.
And, so that the kind of journey to actually sharing some harder truths with people, I think is something that maybe we don't look at enough, is how to communicate our truth.
Hmm. Yes, I agree. I think interpersonal communication might be the most difficult skill to develop,
Mhm.
because we didn't get the handbook. I didn't get the handbook, and my parents definitely did not get the handbook. So I wasn't even given any kind of indication of how to communicate in healthy ways. And I think most of the people in our society would probably agree that this is an area where we have growing edges. And if we were
Yeah.
able to communicate our truth, and as you say, in a loving way, right? Coming from a place of love rather than a place of anger or resentment or defensiveness,
Mhm.
that might solve a lot of problems. But I think
Mhm.
the ego gets involved, and I'm not saying egotistical per se, I'm not using it that way, but our ego keeps us alive. It keeps us like, yes, I have to go out the door, yes, I have to drive to work, yes, I have to go to the grocery store, and yes, I'm aware, and my child has to go to practice and I have to drive him. But sometimes our ego is also represents us in a way that isn't true, shall I say. So sometimes I think of the ego as a false self, that there's a
Uh-huh.
capital S self with a capital T truth, the inner sage, but the ego comes along and presents itself as true. And then that's the ego that gets the hurt feelings, and that's the ego that wants to lash out. And that's the ego, just to bring it to positive intelligence for a moment, that's the ego that is a judge, a jury, and an executioner. The ego is people pleasing, it is victim, it is a hypervigilant person, it is a control person, it is a hyperachiever, it is an avoider. And so all of those saboteurs are aspects of the ego that get us into trouble and make our lives miserable.
And if we know ourselves, if we've done that inner journey, that inner inquiry, then we know what those judges are and we can recognize it more quickly when it arises. And if we've got training on how to reach the inner sage, how to reach the essence of who we are, we can go there very quickly. And that's my message to folks, is that it's available, meaning the essence of who we are, and all we have to do is whatever techniques would work for the people that I work with. I don't just lay on a training that says this is the way you must do it, because everybody has their own avenues to
Mm-hmm.
uh, not only the avenue, the blocks to go through, but also what is that inner, I like to think of it as a jewel. What
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes you think about it as a light. But I want to come back to this whole idea of how to speak from that. What does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to listen to our inner sage, but how does our inner sage get the, well, that's funny. How does she take the stage, huh?
Yeah.
And be able to speak up and feel the confidence, the deep confidence, which is different than speaking techniques, right? It's like, I know who I am. I know where my core quality of whatever this good that's inside me, and I know how to drop. I'm going to do it right now. Big breath, and I drop down into the uh, the strength that's in my core, and there I am. I'm here, and I can communicate gentle, kind, and even if it's a difficult conversation, I can stay present.
So that brings me to a couple of things. One is I would love it if you would give us sort of the shorter version of how you came to do this kind of work, your personal story, however comfortable you are sharing that with our audience, and then maybe an example of how you do work with people. What does that actually look like? Maybe you could give us a fictional client just to give us a sense of what that's like.
Sure. I would say quickly, I had gone in a PhD program to get my clinical psych license and to be a doctor of psychology. I'm but I hid the fact that I was terrified of speaking in public, and so it's easy. You're sitting in your office, you don't ever have to go out and speak. So that would be where I was hiding. So that kind of, well, how did you wake up then, Doreen? Well, somebody asked me to give a presentation and I refused, and then they confronted me with "Isn't fair your business." And that was the moment I felt like, okay, I've been exposed. Somebody has seen that I'm hiding here. And so the journey to find my voice started with Toastmasters, which didn't go deep enough for me. Yes, I learned how to do vocal variety, but I still felt like the little one who had I left behind way back earlier in my life wasn't still free to come out and say, "Hello, world, here I am." And I would say that's just briefly the journey that I took, and to get at the deeper fears, a whole nother conversation, get at the root of my fear. But I'll talk about the root of my fear then with somebody that I've worked with.
Yeah.
And I would say that that person sweated every Friday when they had to give a presentation to the sales team.
Mm.
In fact, he was the head of the sales team, but he was terribly nervous and was overcome with anxiety every Friday morning. And when we dug, you talked a little bit earlier about the deep digging into yourself to go through the pain.
Mm-hmm.
We landed on a time in his life when he was about maybe 12 years old, in this school where you starting to be more social, where it's, you've got peers that,
Yep.
you know, a much more vulnerable place to be, I guess. And he asked a question in a sex education class, and everybody laughed at him. And then they
Oh.
started teasing him, and he was being bullied from that
Mm-hmm.
moment on. And so his conclusion is, I'm not going to speak up. It's too scary. It's dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of it's dangerous was really clear. So first of all, we pinpointed exactly where it happened for him, or at least that time of life where it happened. And what we did was take back, I mean, you're talking about the inner stages. It feels like I reach into what's possible. We go back together to that moment, and we both look at and try and find, not try, we look for and find what was what's a new way of looking at that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
he looked at himself, it's like with compassion, that's my favorite word. He looked at this little boy in the classroom going, raising his hand, and then everybody laughing at him. And he went, you know what? That little boy had more courage than anybody else. He was the only one willing to ask such a question.
Yeah.
And so that kind of I feel myself getting kind of my fists going, I am powerful. Look at, I am courageous. I was courageous then.
Mm-hmm.
So the misinterpretation that he's carried with him all these years
Yeah.
that makes him afraid and think that speaking in public is dangerous was the beginning of him being able to go, wow, take a new sense of self into these meetings that he had on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That reminds me of how our brains work, right? And just sort of pop neurology. We have an amygdala that has the fight, flight, freeze response, and trauma
Yeah.
can that becomes overdeveloped, and the hippocampus isn't as much in the prefrontal cortex. So sometimes we see paper tigers and think they're real, and
Yes.
so it's a trauma response often. And I'm not,
Yes.
it could be a small t trauma, but it's still at that age. That is one of the most crucial ages. I'm talking to an expert here, for kids in their socio emotional development. Those middle school years, and I can attest because I have a son who's, thank goodness, emerged out of them alive. We've all emerged out of them alive, still standing, wobbling a little, but it was really, really hard. That
Mhm.
was like you had to have friends. You couldn't say the wrong thing, you couldn't wear the wrong
Yes.
clothes, you had to
Yes.
fit in.
Right.
And
Right.
so I
So
can imagine this person was feeling completely alienated from his peers.
as a young boy, yes. Oh, yes. And then how that lives and continues on into adulthood, and that's what I love about doing the work that I do is people come in with a situation, and to me it's a puzzle. What
Mm-hmm.
actually happened, because it's got to be outside of themselves. We don't come in with feeling like we're a failure or we're weak or that nobody's going to approve of us. We don't come in that way. So something has happened. And I
Mm-hmm.
like to peel back until we get to, well, what were the root causes? And then treat those root causes and empower them. So, and with my mindfulness techniques, be able to help be present, more
Mm-hmm.
connected to themselves and their listeners in a way that helps them be way more impactful. I guess I
Yeah.
would say that word is make the impact they're meant to make.
And that has a somatic quality. You talked earlier about just,
Um,
breathing and centering and getting right here where the inner sage
yes,
lives, where the essence is. And so by doing that mindfulness, you are talking about somatic work, right? It's really about
yes,
getting in touch with the body through the breath.
yes, yes, yes. In the program, the 3 month program I do, that's the first month is all about quieting the mind, calming the body. And it's actually, Jamie, it's actually stress reduction.
Uh-huh.
And the second month, what we work on is connection, connection to the core, to the essence, to the inner sage, and
Mm-hmm.
how to connect with other people, even though they may be judging you. And then
Mm,
the third month, we work on actually taking all of these new skills out on the road.
mm. Yeah. That sounds like a great program. And is it group coaching, or do you do group
Mhm.
coaching, or is this one on one?
Well, I do both. The 3 month group coaching is going to be coming up in May, so that's why I probably mentioned it, just in case listeners are uh, thinking that this might be a path for them to find their voice. It's called the Find Your Voice Training, and it's a 3 month program where the result is to be more connected to the truth of who you are, so that you can speak up in any situation. It's not just a stage with a microphone
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
where, or even just a work situation. It could be in relationship, like being able to say or to listen for what's really true about the other person,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how to tap into what's really true about, and does that person really. I know for me, in I didn't get married till I was 60, so it took me a long time to open up to love. So I,
Mm.
I know I am somebody that I can say has learned to say I love you. It was really hard for me to do.
In the mirror?
I could probably say it to myself, but to say it to a man, my partner, I have to say it's easier for him to say it to me
Huh.
still.
Wow.
But I know I love saying it. So that's what I'm talking about is what what is inside of us, and is it being, are you holding yourself back, whether it's like on a large audience or a small group or one to
Mm-hmm.
one in intimate
Mm-hmm.
relationships. To me, your voice is always with you. Your essence is always with you.
Yes. Yes.
And are you able to find and speak from your essence?
Yeah. And just like you said, be in touch with that. I was thinking also about how in relationship we lose, a lot of us, I won't say everybody, but a lot of us, and me included, I have lost myself in a relationship because I didn't value myself enough. And
Mm,
because I didn't value myself enough, the other person didn't value me. And as a result, I didn't speak up and say what was
mm,
really important to me. I either didn't, I stayed too long, or I didn't speak up and I was miserable, or I thought the person should be a mind reader or something. But what it was I wasn't saying this is what I need or this is how I feel, because
Yes.
I didn't, I wasn't confident enough
Yeah.
to just be real and be authentic and be okay, whether you like it or not. I have to be me. And
Yes.
go ahead.
I'm so glad to hear you talking about it in this way and less about public speaking. Because actually, anytime with somebody, it feels, well, public situation.
Mm,
And even what we say to ourselves sometimes, I've just started coming to think about that as public also, because somehow we've taken on what somebody else has said to us or what society has said to us. So in a way, it's we're speaking to ourselves, and that's public speaking.
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of all the ways I have suppressed my voice, so many ways, and it's actually still hard for me. There are so many
Hmm.
things that I struggle to let out, and it's self-censorship.
Uh-huh. But you have
And
skills now. You know what a judge is and what the saboteurs are.
yes,
So
yes,
it's like, yeah, if we know the sound of those voices, it feels like we begin to say, "I hear you."
right. And now you can sit in the corner.
Yes.
So I have created a very comfortable living room with a big screen TV and, plush couch and table, drinks, food. And I realized when I realized I had created such a hospitable environment for my judge and saboteurs, and I learned to acknowledge them. They're never just going to go away, but they're not with me 24/7 taking over
Uh-huh.
my mind the way they used to. Now it's like, well, I'm taking the couch away. You are not getting food. I'm taking the remote. You can't watch TV. And yes,
Uh-huh.
I'll see you, but you don't get to stay and I don't have to listen to you anymore. But,
I
you
love
know,
it.
they pop
Yeah.
in, and I call them ventriloquists because they sound like me. And then I think it's
Uh-huh.
real.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
And
so that's the
the
lie.
I like the image of you feeding them because isn't that what they say? What you feed is what grows.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you stop
Indeed.
feeding them.
Right. Exactly. Right. So there's a story. I think I told it on one of the first two podcasts that I broadcast. There's a grandfather and a grandson, and they're walking along, and the grandfather says, "You know, each of us has two wolves, a good wolf and a bad wolf. And the bad wolf is has all of these characteristics. He's greedy and he's resentful and he's angry and he's selfish and on and on. And he said, and the good wolf is kind and loving and compassionate and empathetic. And he said they're always at war with each other. And the boy says, well, Grandpa, which wolf wins? Grandpa says, the one you feed.
Yes.
So which
Yeah.
wolf are we feeding on a given day?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It almost is worth going to get a plush toy and sitting in
Uh-huh.
here. Okay, which one am I feeding today?
Yes. 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 I mean, really, that is, I would say it would be one technique for somebody who is struggling with, fear or some kind of self-judgment like that,
Mm-hmm.
to make it literal, like what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. And that, yeah, because when it's real and it's not just in here and you can't intellectualize it, right?
Right.
If we could sink it away, we probably would. But it is that thing you were talking about. It's this getting in touch with what's real and in here. I think that's why, for me, meditation and Reiki are so important, because I get to be in touch with all of my energy points and I know when they're off.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
can focus on something and I can put my hand on it. I put my hand there
Uh-huh.
and pay attention to what's going on right there. I'll bet you do some of that in your mindfulness.
I'm doing it right now because I know we're coming to an end, and I
I
just want to
know we
say
are.
so grateful for shared space with you. I love the speaking about that inner realm with somebody who understands the territory. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. It's a blessing to see you here and have everybody listen to your wisdom, your experience. And Doreen's information will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to reach her. And until next time, I will see you all at the PQ Gym. Take care.